Hello, welcome to Healing Arts Talks. Hello, everyone. Today I have a very special guest, Natasha Williot, who is a drama therapist and Canadian counselor. And I'm super excited to have you on today, Natasha. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yes, likewise. I feel like a drama therapist. It's really cool to meet you all. It's kind of like very rare. So it's really always a great opportunity to connect with drama therapists and learn more about each therapist's practice.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we tend to be really embodied, just like as people. And
yes, I noticed that even with the mirroring and the yes, I love that. Yes, it's beautiful. And with that being said, can you talk a little bit about your story and your journey to becoming a drama therapist and what drew you to the practice of drama therapy?
Absolutely. Um, it was kind of by accident. So to go kind of really back when I was in middle school or something. So my first of all, my kind of like bit of a longer introduction. My lineage is that I'm a third generation settler. So my mom's side is Dutch, my dad's side is French. Everyone lived the Nazi occupation in Germany. There was a lot of kind of coping with hunger, coping with like invasion war, all of that fun stuff. And then they came to Canada when they were older. So a lot of my way of being raised was connected to the like this really importance of health
Mm,
and family and taking care of each other and assuming that things are not necessarily going to go well. So I
mm,
think that's kind of like this important, in a weird gift that I've been given. And I was raised in a small Franco-Ontarian town that was actually quite like protected, very like a little bubble. And so in my own life, things had been pretty soft. And in middle school, I arrived to a moment where one of my best friends, uh, family member, developed cancer. And as a 12-year-old, I didn't know what to do and I didn't know what to say. And I really hated that feeling. And with that whole kind of, fix things mentality, and that we have power to make a difference, I set out to be a psychologist. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And kind of like set up my whole kind of like academic career to do that. And at the same time on the side, I just kept doing theater. I kept following, we had a theater community. That was where I made all of my friends. That was where kind of like my own personal identity, I really got to play around and explore. I'm realizing that that's also probably, I'm also neurodivergent. So a lot of those questions, I think, were being embodied through theater.
mm.
I did the writing, I did the acting, became really close, and then I left. And I was like, okay, I really need to um, continue this like passion of mine, but it was never a real job. Like it was never a real possibility.
You're right.
Um, art in my social circle was something that you did on the side, and I didn't know anyone. I didn't know any artists. Like it didn't exist in my world of a small farmer town. We didn't have art class in my high school.
Wow.
And so I just kind of did it community wise. And I managed to do a minor in my undergrad. So I did a major in psychology, and I was like, I need to do theater anyway. So I'll do a minor. I might as well, kind of get it. And I kept doing community theater on the side and student theater, and worked in a summer camp where we did a week-long play where the kids were involved. And then you got to see these kids transform, these kids who were like in terrible positions in their life, and they weren't the same. You got to see the real kid by the end of the week. You gave them an opportunity to be themselves in a space with different people who just deeply loved and accepted them, right? Even with all of the like things that kids do.
Right.
And so when I was like looking for like future steps, I was like, you can't let go of this. So I just Googled it. Googled. I was like, what could I do with drama therapy, with like theater and psychology? And turns out there was a program in Montreal, which was 2 hours away from where I was at that time, still accessible for me to see my family, which has always been important. It happened so that my partner at the time lived there, so I was like, it's perfect. And I just jumped into the program, and I did not know what it entailed. I was not prepared. Got in, and it's been life-changing. It's been a really beautiful journey. So that's kind of like how I got into it. I think 2 really significant performances that I did was also, I was an actress for a student play done by one of the history students, actually, on the Armenian genocide. It was called Nameless, and it was about all of the women who had been killed and we had never heard about. Incredibly powerful, and also, I suspect, quite traumatizing for people who saw it, in many ways. So that was this like, okay, the power of theater, but also in a way, the power isn't, it can be dangerous when not well held.
Yeah.
And then the year after, I think I wrote a performance about like a writer with mental health issues that was really well received, and I directed a performance based off of the vagina monologues, but expanded to kind of any form of like oppression, so racism, sexism, transphobia, ableism. Like people brought their work or they proposed them, and then we like assigned actors to it, and it was one of the most healing experiences that I've ever had. For me, for the cast, for the audience. I've had military people come to me and say, I've never seen anything like this, and I was deeply touched, which I was like, yay, screw toxic masculinity. And that just kind of confirmed that whatever I do, it has to be holding both these ideas of health and art.
Wow, thank you for sharing. That's so beautiful. It's like something about that, building community with theater, and then also theater that speaks to what's going on and speaks to, certain issues that are happening or that have happened that need to be addressed and that need healing. And it's wonderful to hear how you kind of like held space for both, as you were saying, throughout your journey.
Thank you. We try.
Yes. Yes, it was very powerful. Even when you were, talking about those plays, it kind of reminded me of like the work of Bertolt Brecht a little bit, like Mother Courage and Her Children, about how, powerful those kind of movements were, where you had plays that spoke to, human rights issues and major social, issues that were going on and are continuing to happen.
Have you heard about Armand Volkas?
No.
So I don't know if he has the official title of drama therapist, but he's pretty much a drama therapist who was inspired by Brecht work. And he does something called Healing the Wounds of History. Ooh. And he still practices today. And his work is absolutely stunning. And it's all about bringing together groups who historically are or were opposed to one another, and creating a performance where both of the perspectives were shared. So one of the most, like, it started, I think, with the like Palestinians and Israelites, and bridging, right, healing those wounds.
Yeah.
Without necessarily, and not hiding the violence that was done.
Right.
Right. But moving beyond the good guys and bad guys.
That whole black and white narrative that's usually presented, or all or nothing kind of thing.
Yeah. And this idea of like, okay, well, how can we repair for real? Or how can we move forward if we do not want to continue this? I know he's in Canada right now, and I know he's done some work with Indigenous communities. And I think right now he's doing some work actually with other drama therapists who carry their own like histories of trauma, which is really interesting.
That sounds like powerful work. Like, like it's like very exciting to hear. Like the subject matters aren't exciting, but the work to, doing that kind of work to begin the healing process sounds exciting and seeing how
Yeah.
theater can be an avenue for that.
Absolutely. I know that. So I just joined, it's called Playback Theater. I don't know if you've heard of that. And it's not drama therapy per se, but it is therapeutic theater. And the idea is that the audience shares their stories, and the actors, there's a conductor who kind of has a bit of almost a therapy role to get that person to share like the emotions and the like really important relevant parts and really reflect, but also so that the actors can pick up on the metaphors, on the feelings, on the tensions going on within that person, and then portraying that on stage. Sometimes it's literal, most of the time it's symbolic. And you can have them very short, like 15 seconds, and you can have them longer, for like, yeah, it's incredible. And it's really interesting because you don't know what you're going to get.
Right.
Sometimes you're going to get a story of like, my cat spilled the milk on my phone right before and now I'm all frazzled. And then you have stories of like, I saw my dad die in my arms. And then you're like, okay, we're going to honor those stories.
That's a really great way to break that fourth wall too, and invite the audience into it as participants in a way.
And the most important part of it is that we check in with the teller, which is the person who shares the story, to make sure that we got it right. And if we missed something isn't quite right, then he or they let us know so we can redo it. And it's all about making sure, and I think this is really the core of drama therapy, is making sure that your story is seen, held, and honored in like holistic ways.
Right. That's really powerful. And with that being said, like, how do you apply those principles of social justice and equity into your practice as a drama therapy?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. First of all, so now I'm currently in private practice, which is an interesting space to be for social justice work, because I feel that you have more power and also less access in a way. And this question that always comes back is, how do we handle the sliding scale?
Yeah.
And what tends to happen is that creative arts therapists, I'm guessing therapists at large, tend to actually want to help people so bad that they don't charge enough to make a living that supports them. And that's connected to the larger systemic issues of devaluing care work, women's work, even more so like Black and brown bodies seeing work as like part of that person's identity. So there's like multifacets. There's the work that I do with my clients, and then there's the work that I'm trying to do in the like system with the therapists. So with the therapist, it's about kind of reminding, at the end of the day, it's always about reminding about the systems of power, reminding us that we individually will not solve the issues, and also finding creative ways to sustain ourselves, but also still provide the people who need it with the services that they need it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always look like sliding scales. That can look like, for example, so I'm joining this playback troupe, and all the money that I'm going to make as an actor is going to go to a fund that I'm going to use for Black, trans, and Indigenous people who want to work with me. And so kind of this is, so that way I'm sustained, and hope my art is literally feeding this opportunity for people to work with me if they want to. The work with the, I mean, it's such a big question. So, I mean, I know. It's like, oh, we can keep going.
Yeah. So
that's the first thing that comes to mind. The other thing when in my work with clients is that it's always going to depend on who the client is. Now, and what my relationship is to them based on our social locators. So my work as a like cis white woman is not going to be the same if I work with a trans teen as I work with an Indigenous single mother, or a white man with ADHD.
Right.
Like these, which are also tends to be. So I work with neurodiverse, Indigenous, and multicultural, and like LGBTQ plus people. Those are like my crowds, because at the end of the day, these are also the people who are victimized by a lot of systemic violence.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more, but those are my the ones that I'm trained and passionate about. And so a lot of it is bringing the human back in. So I talk a lot about myself. There is not a therapist. So now I'm in my home office, but in my in-person office, there is not a therapist chair. People don't know where to sit when they come in.
Yes.
Right? There's a couch. There's pillows on the ground. I often sit lower. I often ask them to direct me. And I share my opinions from the beginning. I say, this is what I believe in. You need to know this if you want to work with me. Now, this is something that I can do in private practice that when you work in community care or institutions is a lot more difficult because they choose me.
Right.
And that's why I like private practice, is I find that my clients get power. They choose me, they hire me. So I have to be held accountable.
Right.
Whereas, yes, it's free or more accessible in community and institutions, but people don't choose the therapist. They don't choose their services. They might be stuck with someone who is harming them.
Yeah, and who kind of perpetuates that and denies their experience, you know.
Yeah, and they can't be held accountable because the institution is supporting them. Whereas for me, chances are that I have perpetuated like patterns, that I have harmed people, but they just left because they are wise. I probably don't know what it is yet, and hopefully I will learn someday so I can make sure I don't do it again. But they are not forced to remain in a relationship with me.
I love that idea of like giving the clients power and being aware of power dynamics, and also kind of social capital, if you will, like based on identity and how that informs, you know, how people move in the world, how they're treated, and your relationship to your clients in that way. I think that's really powerful.
Thank you. A lot of this that I've learned comes from the Response-Based Practice Center. So anyone who's interested in doing this kind of work or working with someone who has this approach, that is where you should go. They are built upon the experiences of Indigenous women victims of like violence at so many levels, and they incorporate this like decolonizing perspective within from the like foundations of the work. And they put the emphasis on how people respond to violence, that we are not passive recipients,
right,
who are traumatized and broken. We are active, wise beings who do things for a reason. And that's been transformative. So they give training. They have other people who have that certification. My supervisor, Cahty Richardson, Kinisqueo, is her Métis name, Cree name. And she wrote a few books as well that are really powerful. Facing the Mountain is also about this beautiful braiding of like academic knowledge and social work, as well as personal history with like illness, as well as like lifelong history of like her life as a Métis woman. It's really good. She also has a Substack. It's $7. I can't keep up with how much she like provides in wealth of stuff. So please go see Cahty Richardson's Substack.
Definitely check out Cahty Richardson. That sounds so powerful, and I love that idea of also, you know, personal history being validated in a space, because I feel like there's sometimes, especially within the world of academia or like, you know, studying thing, it's more so about like the research that's already been done as opposed to the person's personal narrative or history or family history or lineage. So that's really wonderful that that space has been created for people to work through that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, thank you. It's true. And I think coming back to the question of social justice is that we cannot do this work if we do not work with people's personal histories.
Mm.
Like it makes no sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's interesting though is that as a drama therapist, I also work a lot with metaphor, and I work with stories and myths and fairy tales. That's something I really love. And so often people end up braiding their personal histories, like you're naming, into those stories. That way, I don't need to know it. It helps me reflect, but they get to choose what they share with me and not. And at the end of the day, the story does the work with them.
Mm.
That stories have wisdom, right? Yeah, and this what you're naming about lineages is so important. It's yeah, it's hard because at the core, like psychotherapy, actually comes from Moreno, who is a drama therapist, well, psychodrama, but it also comes from a literal attempt of colonization through and right and transphobia and like genocide of LGBTQ plus people, like the whole field is built on those foundations.
Right.
And so acknowledging lineages and trying to work within the mental health field in these holistic ways is also in a way creating cracks in the system.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully space for people who are forced to always disconnect from their body to survive have space to come back.
Yeah, and I think that's really, thank you for bringing that up. And I think that's really important because in the mental health field, there's a lot of those practices are sometimes antiquated because they're rooted in racism and transphobia and homophobia. So it's like to be able to work on dismantling that as a practicing drama therapist, I think is really important work.
Yeah.
I would love for you to let folks know like what you have going on now and how they can get in touch with you and stay connected with you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I'm kind of like, I feel like I'm just getting started on
I
this
know.
like
Yeah,
big
I'm just being
conversation.
mindful of the time. I don't want to.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, thank you for bringing that back. It's interesting. Yeah, so for anyone who's a creative arts therapist, I'm launching a membership that looks like supporting creative arts therapists who either want to launch their private practice, have a part-time one, or want to develop it into a ethical, so anti-ism basically way, but also that is sustainable, so you don't have to choose between yourself, your client's needs, and like your business, and that centers creativity, because that's the other thing, like we were saying, at the core of it all, the way that we work, creativity is medicine. Creativity is life energy, and not letting that go.
Yeah.
For people who are not creative arts therapists, I don't currently have a group running. I have some space. I always try to create space for people who are neurodivergent, LGBTQ plus, like that I was saying, who would want to work with me in individual, but I'm also having a few wait lists for group work, and I find that group work is so powerful. So I have one that's gonna use myth, fairy tales, and mask making to kind of do all of this embodied deep lineage work.
That's super exciting. All that information is going to be in the description box below for folks to check out. Please check out Natasha's work. This is awesome. And I want to thank you so much for coming on. And I wish we could continue this because, I feel like we were just getting started too. This work that you're doing is so transformative and so needed, especially now. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Once again, thanks for the invitation.
Yes, thank you. And thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.